Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast. Learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 63, and I'll be talking to Jamal Jeevanjee, a best-selling author, podcast, and a full-time life coach. As an author with over 20 years of experience working with people in various stages of personal struggle and challenges, after traveling to many cultures around the globe, and now as a full-time life coach, Jamal has discovered the common root of human suffering along with a sustainable solution required to help people become liberated and empowered. Jamal is passionate about serving individuals, couples, and groups on a path towards enlightenment, wholeness, and liberation. Hello and welcome to Jamal. How are you, Jamal?
I am fantastic. It's so good to be with you today.
I'm really excited actually to delve into some of your pieces, not only from a life coach perspective, but also from the perspective of you being an author with quite an interesting background. So following and navigating that path that got you to where you are today. So we're going to get right into it and ask you a big, bold question. What do you believe about yourself? And do you feel it defines who you are today?
What a great question. When it comes to believe, my understanding of belief is, well, first, it could be a couple of things. Number one, a belief can be a thought that I think anytime we think a thought repetitively, that can become a belief. It's just a repetitive thought. My understanding of belief is a mental construct of something that I have. It makes sense. Maybe a lot. It's kind of like an educated guess, a logical conclusion. For example, if I talked to 10 people who knew you and they all said that you were an amazing person, so generous, deep thinker, I may form a belief about you. And that belief may be that you're everything they said, that I would have evidence. Lots of people know you. They say this about you, must be true. That to me is a belief. A belief is something that I don't actually have firsthand experience with, but it's something that I kind of have the mind makes sense mentally or in an intellectual basis. So I've had all kinds of beliefs about myself over the years based upon initially how my parents began to see me and understand me. So I formed some beliefs, unconscious beliefs and some conscious beliefs based upon my experience with other people. So I formed those beliefs. I've had false beliefs about myself. I've had false beliefs about other people, situations, God, however you want to name it. But then eventually those beliefs shifted and I've had what I would consider true beliefs. But going back to your question, what is my belief about myself? Well, I've tried to actually get away from all beliefs about myself, because my understanding is beliefs are rooted in things I don't actually have experience with. They're mental constructs. But what I have come to understand through a point of just learning to experience myself and through observation of myself, I've become aware, because I think awareness kind of gets rid of the need for belief. What I've become aware of at an experiential level within myself is that I am life, that I am an expression of creativity, of divine creativity, of light, of life, of love, and that I also hold space. I also become aware that I also hold space for a dimension of myself that has been affected, traumatized, or affected by my belief system and the belief system of other people. So that's also what I've come to be aware of myself. And it has really affected me and transformed my life. Because beliefs, in the past, I used to have beliefs that I was a good person or that I could be a good person. I used to have beliefs that I was going to live a significant life and do great things in the world. And every time, what I noticed was when I had those beliefs, I had to try to live up to them and to prove them to be true. Beliefs are something you could prove or disprove. But what I love about going beyond beliefs and just awareness of who I am is that it no longer requires evidence or proof to me. It's just something I experience. And that's led to a lot of peace and a reduction in stress in my day in, day out experience.
Interesting perspective, but a beautiful one also in highlighting the awareness of who you truly are.
Thank you.
So recognizing the awareness of who you are and stepping into that. What is your calling or callings in this life?
It's a great question. The gist of what I sense as far as a calling is really to help reduce suffering, to help human beings reduce resistance. And this is obviously coming out of my own journey as well, but to really reduce resistance and suffering internally. Because this has been my observation we all have pain points. We all have these, some people call them sacred wounds, but these pain points. But for myself, I've noticed that if I can reduce suffering or resistance internally, my life naturally begins to blossom. It begins to unfold the way it was designed to unfold. And so my heart, and I really believe or I should say, I've become aware of, I also believe this too as well, that every person that's here is here on purpose. And my understanding is that each person that's here is a unique flavor, a unique expression of the source, right? The divine source. And so in order for this world and our society, and I'm also about wanting human society and human consciousness to flourish, in order for that to happen, people have to be in alignment with who they are, right? So my heart is that people will reduce, my work can in some way reduce suffering, reduce resistance that's happening at the internal level so that their life can blossom and flourish. Because when that happens, quote unquote, the purpose that we're here for will naturally begin to unfold.
Naturally, with ease, hopefully.
Totally. Absolutely. With ease. Yes. My understanding is that life is best experienced from a state of ease, right? Because if I have a state of the opposite, which is dis-ease, right? Dis-ease, a breakdown in ease, then I'm struggling with life as opposed to participating with life. And that's a huge shift in what we experience on a day in, day out basis.
It's also a perspective in which the world we live in.
Yes, totally.
The ingrained nature of this system and the environment of how it's built can make it more challenging, or is possibly even designed for it to be more challenging, for there to be this ease.
100%. I think what I've observed is that a lot of our, if you want to call it, institutions, systems of the way the world is governed and is set up is very reactive in nature. So it's reacting to real problems, issues, situations that are going on where people are experiencing. My understanding is that the more we focus on being reactive or reacting to problems, you actually cannot create a different reality when you're in reaction mode. So what is a reaction? A reaction is simply a pattern, right? And a lot of people, in the work I do in coaching, a lot of times what we get very conscious of is the patterns, right? There's typically a pattern that people exhibit throughout their life. And it's most people don't experience new problems. They experience the same problem in new situations, right? But it's the same problem over and over. And so those reactions, every time we experience a problem, if we're not conscious, then however we're programmed. So if we're programmed with a disposition of lack in some way, lack of love, lack of resources, lack of acceptance, well, that becomes the pain point that has conditioned our reactive self, our constructed self. Then what happens is every time we react in those pain points, you end up creating the same situation over and over. And a lot of we see this obviously individually, but I think we can see it collectively on a societal scale, a national scale, a global scale, that we're a lot of times just repeating certain patterns because the systems that are designed to react, not to get to the root and address the root issues, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does. I think perhaps it's one of the bigger challenges that we're facing in being reactive, especially in the last couple of years, but even before that. But now it's become more evident and more visible and more physical, even to a certain degree, that it's hitting us on a whole different level, which can be really taxing on other people or on individuals, or let me put it this way, really taxing on our soul of what it is we're really here to do. So why individuals get pigeonholed into certain environments, roles, and situations, and breaking out of that is so difficult.
Absolutely. Yes, it can be, for sure, because I think we're trained. I think this is the dilemma of being human, right? So all of our senses, our eyes, our ears, they're pointed outward. So we're looking at the world around us through the eyes. We're listening. So all the senses are pointed externally, and because of that, the simulation we're in. Some people say it's like a simulation, but in many ways, even though we understand that our experience is always happening within us, it doesn't seem that way. It seems like what's happening to us is happening to us outside of us. But I always like to come back to and say, okay, lots of things can happen out here. There's a lot of things I don't control, but how I experience something is always within me. It's never outside of me. So my experience is within me. So, but my senses aren't trained to look there. My senses are trained, physical senses and my human senses are trained to always look outside. So it's easy to feel kind of powerless or hopeless to these external forces because that's what I'm looking at. But again, you've probably heard the very common adage, where focus goes, energy flows, right? So where my focus is, that's what I'm going to see. And also, that's also what I'm going to resist. But again, what you resist persists. So it's that pattern. So that is the human dilemma.
It is, yeah. And you've come to recognize this through your own life and your own journey. Was there, or what was the pivotal piece that put you in the space of where you are today?
That's a great question. Well, someone told me recently, and somebody asked me, what is your pain point? And I thought that was an interesting question. But what I have found is that we all have a pain points maybe. For me, I had a major pain point, and I didn't even know it was a pain point. I just thought it was the way life is. I didn't even know it was a unique to me, but at least in my experience, but a major pain point for me, to answer your question, was my biggest belief. I actually had held this belief about myself, not conscious. It took a long time to become conscious of it, but unconsciously I had this belief that I wasn't quite good enough. Like I didn't quite measure up or hit the standard. Like I could always be doing better or more. And that's just how I was brought up. It's like, conditioning. So I had this deep sense of, if people really get to know me fully, they would never really accept me. So they can only accept me to the degree that they know me. So keep people at a distance, then you're safe. So, but we're not designed for that. My understanding is that we're designed for deep connection, deep community. So my higher self, the other dimension, was always longing to go deep with people. But when I would do that, what I would experience is the very thing I feared, which was abandonment, people walking out, people not liking what they got to, so it would confirm this belief, well, I must not be, maybe there is something wrong with me. Then I would try harder. And the more you try, it's resistance energy. That resistance energy produces more resistance. And so this kept happening over and over and over. And I remember I had a conversation with someone that was really enlightening. And they asked me, they said, does your life ever feel like a broken record? Like you just keep meeting the same person in different bodies. They just keep doing the same thing. I said, absolutely. It's very frustrating. And, I repeated that belief. I was like, well, that's how people are. And he said, oh, maybe that's how you are. And I said, and that was kind of offensive. I was like, what do you mean that's how I am? I said, that's how people are. Why would I be like that? I'm loyal. I stick with people. I don't want, and he said, oh, I'm not questioning your loyalty to other people. I'm questioning your loyalty to yourself. And that really was, he's like, just kind of said, hey, look, there are parts of you that you really despise, isn't there? There are parts of you that you don't like, parts of you that you think are problematic, that are liabilities. And I had to get honest with myself and say, yeah, there's a whole side of me that I feel ashamed of. And there it was. That was my belief. And what was happening was that what I was experiencing in relationships and people outside of me was just that belief getting mirrored back to me. Now, this wasn't conscious. I wouldn't consciously choose that. But that's what kept happening. And I realized I am creating this. I'm creating this drama of abandonment, of rejection, which then caused me to doubt my own sense of significance, which was just this vicious cycle. And I realized, like, this is just a mirror. Everything happening in the external world is a mirror of my internal reality. It took me years to actually see that. But it was because of my pain point, because it happened one too many times before I got desperate and say, okay, I want to put this pattern to rest, because the common denominator in all the relationships was me. And it was a hard pill to swallow, because I thought that it meant something negative about me. When I realized it didn't mean anything negative about me, it just meant that I had been affected. We're all affected by things. We're affected by, none of us are born into a vacuum, right? We're all born into a family situation, and our mothers and fathers have history, conscious and unconscious history that goes back millennia. We're all born into that, and that affects us. And so our work, my understanding is that part of the work we're here to do is to transcend those cycles, if you want to call it that, these cyclical patterns, the karmic patterns, language you want to put on it. But that's our work, is to get conscious of them and then to transcend them. And that's how it began to shift for me.
So that's how you got here. And possibly even the unraveling of some really key questions that you were ready to hear at that moment of time.
Yes, I had to be ready to hear that, because had I heard that maybe years earlier, I would have heard it as condemnation or blame. When I think at the time that I heard it, it was good news to me, because I realized, if I'm not a victim to my circumstances, if I've actually been doing this, then that means I can change it. Because I think, if someone would have told me, like, Jamal, you have every right to be upset and to feel like a victim, because you are a victim. That's the way the world is. And that's it. If someone just told me that, there may be some comfort in feeling sorry for myself. There may be some comfort in that, but there would be no hope for change, no hope that I could transcend it, because now I'm waiting until the world changes, until other people change, until I come into a better set of circumstances externally. Then I'm destined to be at the mercy of all these forces outside of my control. And that's not liberation. But I've come to understand that human beings were created, or are here. We exist for liberation, and we will not be satisfied with anything less than full liberation.
Absolutely. What was that tipping point for you to get to that space of going, I'm ready to really ask that question to somebody who you can be vulnerable and trust that is going to ask you such a poignant question? When was that for you? What was going on in Jamal's world?
That's a great question. Now, I don't think this has to be the case with everyone, but for me, it took tremendous suffering. So for me, I went through a divorce. I lost all my income, lost almost all of my relationships, to the point where if it wasn't for some friends letting me stay and sleep on their couch, literally, I was in a clinical depression. I had no motivation, really, no motivation to live even. And it was that level of just despair that before I became open to stop the resistance and stop fighting, stop being angry. I was very angry at the world, angry at other people, angry at the injustice of what I had perceived had happened to me. And it took, when I lost literally everything and even the will to live, that was shocking to me, because I was always somebody, even in all the professions I've done, going all the way back to the beginnings of my life. I've always been somebody that has been service oriented. I've cared about other people, wanting to help other people. That's always been a theme, a common thread that's run through my life. But I got to the point where nothing mattered anymore, even to the point where I just didn't care. I lost that spark for living, for wanting to help people. And from a clinical perspective, someone would look in and say, oh yeah, you are massively depressed. You have clinical depression going on. Well, yeah, of course. I think chemically speaking, that's probably the case, but there was a precipice for that. I didn't just get there. That I was on a path that led to that. And it was a lot of resistance and I didn't even know that I was running. I was on the run from this trauma I didn't want to face, because I thought it would confirm my biggest fears about myself, that I was flawed. There was something deeply wrong with me. But finally, at some point, you stop caring what anybody else thinks, or what you think, when the pain you get desperate. Then it's like, well, I don't care what it takes. Now I'm at a point where I don't want to feel this way. So I either check out and leave and die, or I figure out why I'm here and really get to the root of this. And that's what it took for me.
Courageous times, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
To step into that space of going, okay, nobody's really going to come and save me now. Everybody's left me. I got no money. I got all this suffering and pain that's happening. My will has diminished. A very courageous conversation with yourself to say, okay, someone's got to shift.
Totally. Well, I have to I have a friend that I actually give her credit for a major shift in this perspective. It was during a really dark season of my life, and I was pretty angry. And I had a handful of friends that were really just they loved me. They wanted to help me the best they could. They didn't know exactly how to do that, but they were present. They were there. And I remember one night I was spending some time with a friend, and she was sitting on the couch next to me, and I was just complaining. I think I wasn't even conscious I was just in a loop where I was complaining about certain people and talking about how much I wish things were different. And just it was a very familiar conversation. So she was always so nice, and she was always so gracious, and she would hold space for me. But she was a little different that night. So that night she kind of had this irritated look on her face, and I noticed it. And so she let me, kind of finish my complain fest. And after I got to the end of my woe is me spiel, she looked at me and she goes, you sound like a broken record. It was very hard. It came across really harsh. I said, what do you mean? She goes, have you noticed that you say the same things all the time about this situation? Like you have went round and around and around about how bad your life is, and how unjust, and how these people are bad, and how all these things. And she said, it's a broken record. Doesn't it get old for you? And I couldn't believe that she said that to me. And I said, well, yeah, it gets old. It gets old, but it's old because it's happening. She goes, well, it's old for me to hear it.
Ouch.
And she goes, I'm going to bed. She's like, I'm going to bed. And I was infuriated. And I said, it must be easy for you. It must be nice to be you, that you can just detach yourself and go to sleep, leave, go to bed, and just sleep well. I was like, I wish I could do that. I wish I could detach myself from this problem, from this situation. But I wish I was as fortunate and in the luxurious position that you're in. I was kind of doing that manipulation tactic with her. And she looked at me and she says, oh, you can do that. You can do that. I'm going to bed tonight. And she said, you can go to sleep too. You can choose to go to sleep. It's your choice. Or you could stay up and ruminate. You could stay in your head and focus on all the bad things that have happened to you and how unjust the world is. You could do that as well. And you could do it all night. You choose, but it's always your choice. I'm choosing to go to bed because this is old. And that's what happened. And it stunned me. So I was sitting. I'll never forget. I'm sitting on this couch. Nobody's there. I'm all alone with myself, I should say. Not all alone, but with myself. And I'm conscious that I'm with myself in that moment. I'm sitting there. And it just became clear to me. I was like, I do have a choice. What do I want to do with my focus right now, with my time? Do I want to go to bed? Or do I want to sit in this anger? And I said, I want to sleep. I want to sleep well. And I chose that night. I'm going to lay down and I'm going to go to sleep. I'm just going to let myself fall into sleep. And I slept like a baby. It was amazing. I woke up the next morning and I had it was like somebody had just doused me with power. It was just this feeling of I was empowered. I made a choice about how I was going to experience a block of time. So I experienced a block of time with deep sleep because I chose to turn on, to let that mind, the narrative of victim in the mind, I let it just play its course. I decided to shift my focus somewhere else, and I went to sleep. And I thought, if I have a choice about how to sleep, when to go to sleep, I wonder if I have more choices about where I can put my focus. And that was the beginning. That was honestly the beginnings of me finding where I actually did have power and control.
Magic, huh?
Yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible. I'm so thankful. I look back and I just call those moments of grace that just broke into I needed that example. I needed her to challenge me in that. I needed her to demonstrate for me what personal sovereignty looked like.
Yes.
Because I just didn't know I didn't know I had that choice until she literally demonstrated it for me. And it's something as simple as going to sleep.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But such a pivotal response to everything she was observing, everything she was seeing. So crucial that it hit you right at that moment of time, that you decided to go, hold on a second. I actually have a choice.
Absolutely.
What a beautiful story.
Thank you. Yes, I feel very fortunate to have went through that and experienced that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. So you've engaged in some interesting experiences, as we're all designed to have in this lifetime. The ups and the downs and the bits in between, they're all meant to be there on purpose. But you've come out of it on the other side with a greater understanding and awareness as to possibly why you're here. So my question to you is, what is your intentions with the craft that you have harnessed and garnered over the last couple of years or over the last years?
It's a great question. Well, I have so many intentions. I think to summarize them, one of my intentions is I want to help people see through the illusion of lack. So I wrote a book in 2019. It's called Living for a Living. And the gist of that book, Living for living is really about coming awake to our it depends, some people call dharma, we use the word dharma, or our purpose, but it's a sense of, people get hung up, I don't know what my purpose is. But I think before we can even really answer that question, we have to understand, for me, it was understanding what it was not. Well, from an early age, I began to see that we are taught to leverage our life, to trade our life for survival, right? So most people, people would ask the question, what do you want to do for a living? What do you do for a living, right? And I know what's meant by the question, but I don't like how it's phrased, because it's like, people aren't really asking what I do for a living. People are asking, what do I do for money? What do I do for survival? Well, that's a very different question, because in the household I grew up in, I watched my parents do the best they can, obviously with what they had, but they leveraged, because this is all they knew. They were taught to leverage their life away for survival, for money. And I was taught to do the same thing. And that's not living, because survival. So my biggest question is what do we do once we survive? What if we did survive? Then what? What's the point of surviving? There has to be something more than survival. Well, we all want to survive. It's innate, it's kind of programmed into our construction, right? Even a little animal or bug, if you see it, like if you try to hit a spider, I mean, it's going to run because it wants, at a very innate level, life wants to live. That's a given. But survival is something I've discovered that comes with living. But if you focus on survival, you may not live. We may never get to the point. The idea is that, well, if I can take care of the survival piece, then maybe if I'm fortunate enough, I can focus on what do I want to do? So people do this, right? If I can just take care of my income, then maybe when I retire, there'll be some space at the end to maybe experience life at a different level. So then we're waiting, we're chasing. So it's always outside of so my thought is like, but we're not here for that. We're actually here to live. And if we will learn to live, and living is an internal process, right? I have life. I am life. This is happening at the deepest level. But because our senses aren't pivoted internally, they're external, we tend to miss our life. So my intention is to help people turn inward, discover their life, begin to live for a living. And they will begin to see that survival takes care of itself. Survival comes with living. It's like, if you want tires, you could go get the tires, but why do you need the tires? Right? What are tires for? Aren't they to get you from point A to point B? Well, if you buy a car, you get the tires, and the tires will work for you. But if you just seek the tires, you can have the tires, but you may not get anywhere with them. So my question is like, if you have life, what would you do with it? Well, we don't want to wait to answer that question. We want to move into that right now. And survival comes with it. It's like the tires. It comes with the life. And so the book Living for Living is it's my journey of how I've made the transition from what I call the economy of survival to an economy of love and service. And that is, I believe, an economy that actually, there is a place, in the old economy of survival, there's not a place for everybody. There's huge swaths of the population that are left out of that. Mm-hmm. But in the new economy of love and service, there's a place for everybody. And it's an abundant reality. It's a lucrative, abundant universe that we live in. And we can create that kind of a society. I'm convinced of it. But that shift has to happen internally first. We can't create it externally. That it can just mirror that internal reality. So that's a huge intention I have. And I think a second intention would be to create a more peaceful world. Because conflict, be it at a personal level or at a societal level, international conflict, war, all of these things that create poverty, create suffering in the world. These are all physical manifestations of an inward reality. Peace starts, or the lack of it, starts internally. And that's my heart, is to help people become at peace with life internally first, so that we can begin to create systems and institutions and societies that are reflections of that reality.
Beautiful. And how crucial it is to build that awareness of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
To, I'm going to use the word believe that you can do more and that there is more in store for you as a human being. So, continuing your analogy of we need to figure out the internal mechanics of this vessel so we can get the tires to just go in flow to where we're supposed to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
It's beautiful.
It is. It is.
So I'm really honored to be able to have this conversation with you and get deep into your perspective and your learnings as to what you've been through, how you overcome them from the deep suffering that you've encountered, but also coming to the flip side of it and having the abundance of love for yourself that ripples and emanates out. So thank you, Jamal, for sharing.
Of course. Thank you as well. I appreciate you're hosting me, and I appreciate the fact that you have worked so hard to create this podcast and space for these kind of conversations to happen, because I know people are listening to this conversation, and it doesn't matter. I always say it, just putting out these conversations into the world, we've already won, because the vibration, the intention gets carried on the back of the vibrations of our conversation, and Absolutely. It goes where it needs to go, and the Absolutely. Right people will hear it. And these conversations are extremely valuable, and I know it takes effort. It's not easy to create a podcast like the one you have. It takes a lot of intentionality and commitment, and I just honor that. Honor your work in that.
Thank you, Jamal. Thank you. And like you said, the ripple effect is happening as we speak. And those souls, just as you were sitting on the floor with your friend sitting on the couch, and I've had my own journey too, they will receive to those who are ready to receive it.
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you again so much for your time. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you as well. Take care.
I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.